Hello and welcome back to the AI Marketers Playbook, where we cover actionable frameworks to help you leverage AI and marketing strategies in your business. I'm Audrey Chia, your host, and today I have with me Andrejs Karpovs. Now, Andrejs is an accomplished tech leader with nearly 2 decades of experience in driving IT strategy, digital innovation, and transformational initiatives. Now, his expertise spans enterprise architecture, infrastructure solutions, and managed services. Andrejs has implemented AI solutions for big enterprises, partnering with Google to deliver AI and machine learning workshops, and has educated over 8,000 employees on AI, even within his organization. Andrei, welcome to the show. We are excited to have you today.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
You seem like someone with huge experience and expertise in the world of AI. Could you tell us a bit more about your journey, your background, and what you're currently doing right now?
Yeah. So I actually started as a database administrator. So I'm by nature very technical, and I did a lot of administration and operations for applications, databases, infrastructure. So I kind of grew together with the technologies, and then basically we have implemented all the modern things like public clouds, automation, and every technology has matured. So did we. So we kind of pivoted into modern things. And yeah, I've been doing also a lot of infrastructure architecture things, enterprise architecture things, leading different teams. And yeah, that's basically my background. But the main vendor or the main technology that I have been working for most of my life is Oracle and Oracle database. But Oracle has a large suite of enterprise products ranging from databases to SaaS applications, CRPs, integrations, etc. And now they also have obviously generative AI service as well, which we are targeting too.
Wow, that is super cool to hear. You seem like someone with huge expertise in this space. But I also know that you are a huge fan of being an AI generalist. Now tell us, what does that mean and what does that encompass?
Yeah, so I've been fan of generalists and T-shaped professionals for all my professional life. There are different opinions about it. Some prefer and actually think
So,
that.
so you might have to repeat that line again. There was like that weird sound. I'm not sure if you heard it, but
No.
I'm sorry, just 2 seconds back. Some might think.
Yeah, so some may think that the specialists are much better when you're focused on something, but I've been kind of wearing different hats and doing it quite successfully. And actually, I feel that I'm developing more when I look from the holistic approach. And yeah, what I immediately when I saw Gen AI technology maturing and the advantages it gives to people, I immediately thought like, hey, if generalists, those who were generalists before Gen AI came into picture, if those guys would be utilizing the AI and being very proficient with AI, I think that could give so much advantage to them. And there is a lot of talks now about one person founders and one person like $1 billion companies, unicorns. I think that's exactly where actually the generalists, maybe, or Gen AI realists, how I call them, may be the ones to try such things in future.
I love what you said, the Gen AI realist, right? I love that play of words. Now, can you tell us what exactly about AI makes it make sense for a generalist compared to a specialist? Because I think AI is still very new to many people, and a lot of people traditionally are stuck in specialist roles, right? So there is already the evolution of people going from specialist to generalist roles. But what about AI makes it suitable, in your opinion, for the generalist?
Yeah, I think, I mean, of course, AI helps equally good to both specialists and generalists, but what I feel will happen in future as the models will become more capable and powerful, then some of the specialists' roles may become obsolete. And of course, there is still a huge need, and I think there will be also a huge need of subject matter experts in future as well. But it's just like when we realize that we can fully offload some of the tasks to AI without worrying that much about precision, whether they're still hallucinating or not. So once we reach to that step, when we are very confident in some of the, maybe it's low level tasks, maybe it's something more complex, but then it kind of naturally seems that those generalists will be able to kind of offload them and then look into something else. And then kind of now, especially because of AI agents and all these things coming into picture, they will be kind of able to orchestrate these things and then see from the bigger pictures, wherein I don't think that specialists will be kind of fully kind of seeing the same picture, right? So that there will be more still using AI, but maybe to learn a topic more deeper and kind of pivot into something else. But this is obviously not a bad thing. So it's just that I feel generalists may kind of achieve the next level with this technology.
It's interesting that you said that, right? Like perhaps more specific skill sets can now be offloaded to AI because they are great at, narrowing down to one specific skill and understanding how to do that. Whereas if you are a generalist, maybe with like a big picture overview, then with that perspective, you can also leverage AI to that extent. I'm curious to know also what kind of like use cases have you been seeing or observing in whether in your company or people that you work with? What kind of like AI use cases have people been implementing right now?
Well, I'd say there are similar things that are used across every domain, which is something that helps driving productivity and efficiency, obviously. So things like writing and doing some planning, brainstorming. I think this is applicable to every single domain out there. But specifically in my domain, we are also working a lot on automation, which means that in past we've been used more traditional automation, workflow based, and now we are also using or transitioning more like intelligent automation, where we are also using agents and LLMs to help us do operations, do infrastructure part, and kind of make also a lot of obviously coding is one of the biggest use cases, right? And then every IT tech company you would have this use case. So this is what we are also doing with AI.
Interesting. Does it seem like in enterprises, is it a lot harder to make that shift, towards adopting AI? Or perhaps are enterprises also a lot more capable of making that change because they have resources? What have you noticed so far?
No, of course, enterprise tend to be slower, right? So it will take some time to achieve the adoption. Obviously, there's a lot of regulation, governance, and a lot of processes which needs to be compliant. So I'd say it's slower in enterprise, but there are obviously in many enterprises there are some smaller departments maybe which are allowed to do more experimentation, which some kind of AI startup within enterprise, right? So there you can kind of do more experimentation and then show some results. And then of course in enterprises there is also a lot of governance around which tools you can use, especially in EU. It's not that easy to, or it's just you have to be cautious, right? Which tools you are using, which information you're sharing. So that's everyone in enterprise wants to have their own proprietary, like in-house model basically, or something that's running from their cloud tenant, which is not shared anywhere else.
Got it. And with that in mind, perhaps you can also share like what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen enterprises face, right? Because I know one thing you said is that it's a lot slower to adapt and adopt because they have to make changes on so many layers and there could be like data and security concerns. But what are the kinds of like common challenges and blockers that enterprises have to work with and how are they overcoming it right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously you have to show ROI, like return on investment. If you're doing something with AI, you can just experiment or kind of watching the fancy demos, but then when it's used on proprietary data, it's not always black and white, and it's not even close to the demos that we are seeing. So when you start really testing something, there's a lot of bumpy roads over there. So and then in order to move something to production, you have to have a clear ROI and how this either attracts more revenue or it drives some cost savings. So I'd say that this is one of the biggest ones because in AI startups, let's say you have a lot more room for experimentation, and that's basically the nature of many AI startups now when they're exploring like fully autonomous AI agent for coding or something, and they spend months to come up with some demo, and then someone tests it, and then they find some drawbacks, right? So in enterprise, you can't spend that much money on testing without bringing any result. So you have to kind of cautiously come up with your use case and make sure it has clear and good ROI.
Got it. So from what you're saying, it seems like you come up with that use case, you come up with that potential KPIs you want to hit, and then you measure the ROI at a small scale before implementing it on a larger scale.
Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
I think that is a great framework for businesses to implement. Even if you are not an enterprise, even if you're running like a small, medium business, this is still a good framework, right? Instead of just using different AI tools and just seeing which one sticks, I think an approach like that is a lot more structured and measured. So, Andres, you also hold workshops, for folks and you teach them different AI skills, right? Now, in these workshops, what are some perhaps foundational concepts you try to cover?
Yeah, just like showing them what the tools are, what the state of the tools are, what the state of the capabilities are. Because like when you are in a sort of this AI bubble, it seems like everyone around you knows the same amount of information, if not more, right? But then when you meet some people for the first time who never heard about ChatGPT and likes, you get surprised, and then you kind of you can go back to the basics and just show what these tools can do, right? And I always like to show. I had like one slide about how the pace of development is going, right? So and then many people who tried GPT-3, let's say when it was released, and they realized, oh, that's hallucinating a lot. Oh, it's not applicable in my use case or role or job, and then they never went back to it. And now when years have passed, like, and we have GPT 4.5 now, how much more capabilities at the moment. And then I also show a little bit, even though I'm not a huge expert in AI for video generation and then maybe for images, but I just show like how many modalities can you address and tackle with AI, and a little bit of audio models as well. So just to show the landscape of the tools.
It's great to give people that, overview of what is possible. Because the problem is most people don't know what is possible. They don't have a basic understanding of the basic tools that are out there. So it's very daunting for them to explore AI, and it seems like this big scary world. But like what you say, if you break it down into a lot more accessible bite-sized bits and you share like very foundational stuff, I think you get people interested, right? Yeah, but I've also had clients who reflected some kind of resistance when it comes to adopting AI. They're either scared or like they're overwhelmed. Have you also encountered that during your workshops?
Yeah, I actually heard some resistance, and some people are kind of, again, they're, let's say, blaming AI that is not accurate. But but then I ask them, when was the last time you have checked it? Like, when was the last time you tried it? And they say, oh, maybe 1 year ago I tried it, and then, it was not precise on my use case. But then I kind of explained that the training data has updated, that the models become more capable. There are now new reasoner models and so on. So then I just encourage them to retest the same prompt or the same use case that they did in past. And then, yeah, then obviously there are some people which I heard are saying that this is another bubble and this is similar to crypto and, you know, Web3. So nothing will came out of this. But even with, so the way I like to say about it, that even if AI would fully stop, like there would be a hard stop on all development today, then it would still take like 3 to 5 years to even transform with the technology state that we have today. Because like I said, we are still in the beginning. There's only small percentage of people that are using it daily and actually using it correctly with real gains. And then even with the current state, I feel like there is so much more that can be achieved.
Yeah, it's very interesting because it's the same tool, right? But whether you're a power user or an amateur user actually makes a whole lot of difference. So I was working with a client recently. They thought they were using AI, to its fullest advantage. But when I looked at their workflows, they were using 15 questions to get to one output, when in fact you could just build a GPT and get it in one single try. Again, then there's that gap between, okay, I know how to use I can ask it for things, but do you know how to use it effectively? I think that is like the next, big leap.
Yeah, that's like, again, bouncing back to this pace of development topic, because there are so many things that are being developed, so many new capabilities, that it's even hard to catch up for those who are in this so-called AI bubble, right? Apart from custom GPTs, there are now projects where you can attach all your files so you don't have to build your RAG pipelines manually and so on. There are now, I recently shared this autonomous data scientist by Google, which you can just run in Colab, and then it analyzes the data and you can ask questions. So it's like much better than what ChatGPT had, advanced data analysis feature. So and then if you when you explore, right, it's like you're kind of finding so many new things that can be used, and you don't have time. You just don't have time to test everything.
Yeah, and it's so funny. Like I remember last year during Christmas, ChatGPT or OpenAI did their Christmas launch, but then they did like so many updates in a short amount of time that nobody really knew what was going on and had no time to catch up. So that was also interesting, right? Because there are so many new functions that appear and then disappear after a couple of months. You got to
Yeah.
relearn everything, so you got to stay updated.
Yeah, I actually still have some because I also I was watching this like live streams by OpenAI, and I still have some thing in Canvas in my backlog that I needed to test, and I still haven't tested it. So I just heard something they were explaining, and then wow, this is for me. I mean, I would love to use and test it, and it's still in the backlog.
Yes, there are always 100 things to test with AI. But what do you think are perhaps some of the important like skill sets that people need, right, in order to start adopting AI? So if they are a professional and they wanted to learn how to use AI, what kind of skill sets do they need? Like, or what kind of, mentality do they need in order to pick this up?
Yeah, I think they definitely should be curious and they should be ready to adapt because this will for sure change the way we work, and there is no way it's being stopping or this will just continue evolving, and people really need to experiment a lot. So and what I'm saying is also, of course, there's also, once you start using it, you should definitely develop your critical thinking even further, because if you are receiving some answer on the topic where you're not really an expert, you have to acknowledge that there can be some drawbacks, hallucinations, whatnot. So they are not 100% correct and reliable. So you need to have that skill to kind of notice that. You need the skill to double check and maybe make a correction, right? So critical thinking. And then, of course, experimentation. So you have to be ready and you have to have that motivation and inspiration to experiment, right? Because, of course, there are many things that people are doing. So we always say, like, we want to automate things to get to things which are more important for us, right? But there are things that seems like being automated, which people generally enjoy doing. Like for instance, in the graphic design, like all these images, like fancy images that have been generated with one prompt with a single click, right? People like really enjoy to do videos of cartoons and so on. But yeah, this just have to be approached with the new mindset that hey, something will change, right? But I would generally want to experiment with these tools. How can these enhance my workflow, right? And then take it to the next level. So there was one statement, was it Figma CEO or someone who said it, that with this technology we want to raise the ceiling and lower the floor. So basically those who couldn't enter that some kind of field, like the barrier is now lower, or it's becoming like equal for everyone, right? But at the same time, those who are experts, they can raise their ceiling with this technology.
It's a brilliant perspective to have because most people will just think, okay, AI is going to replace my job, AI is going to take over creativity, AI is going to, XYZ. But I think that perspective also helps us to realize how you can use AI to your advantage, whether you're someone new to the industry or someone who's already like a veteran, right? I would love to circle back on what you said about critical thinking skills. I think that is incredibly important. This is something that a lot of people don't notice, but when AI gives you content, it always tends to sound a lot more confident. It's also formatted in a report form, which subconsciously you might read it and you might be like, yeah, this sounds like it should make sense. But like what you said, right, that critical thinking is important. What do you think are that human slash AI skills that we need to balance in this new world?
Yeah, I mean, so there should definitely be human AI collaboration. I think we like I would love that we collectively as humanity we would I mean, when technology gets to a state where it's becoming even more and more capable, like everyone is projecting that at some point there will be AGI, it will be able to do all human economic labor and so on. So we have to decide also as humanity, like maybe we want to preserve some of these tasks, right? And maybe, I mean, humans should always be in the driver's seat, so we should be acting as an orchestrators. So that the new thing which I'm now thinking more and more about, and where I see the kind of the big important is for human is also to develop that so-called agency. So we are talking about AI agents on the AI side, but for humans, we need to develop agency, and that means that human should be a doer, right? And then he should be able to do things, deliver things, and he should be proficient in understanding which tasks he should delegate to AI and which tasks he should do them himself and which tasks he should do in a collaboration with AI. So there was like this future of work report from Microsoft, and I think there was that image like when a human like leans on AI, where it asks it for help, somewhere it just fully delegates and it do it autonomously, and somewhere it's just like always in the driver's seat. So I think even like this human AI collaboration, it requires some experience, and then when you use them and experiment with them on a daily basis, that's where you get the feeling and the taste and everything, like how to handle it properly. And then if we think about the future where we'll be having hundreds of these AI agents, right, there will be need of this agency and orchestration from the human being perspective.
Definitely. I think this also really applies to the creative industry. So I came from the world of brand advertising, but then I also pivoted into the world of startups where it's more conversion driven. So the way I see it playing out is AI is very good for like the conversion driven ads, right? So anything that requires data that really focuses on, fast turnaround times because you're just trying to optimize your click-through rates and your CAC. But when it comes to a big branded advertisement, right, you might want to consider having that human to drive it, because the human storytelling, being able to still leverage AI in the process, but still tell your own story, I think there's a beauty in that. And I think that's where you have to decide where you stand and what is your role in this bigger ecosystem and where you want to use AI in your own workflows.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you also talked about is, being able to have the human in the loop, right? So when it comes to enterprises or like bigger companies, what does that look like? Like, how should they even factor that human in the loop in this process?
Yeah, I mean, if there are some things that are being offloaded or fully delegated to AI, let's say AI agents, right? There needs to be means to notify a human being if something is wrong, right? So there shouldn't be the case where something is being done autonomously and it's being done wrong. So there should be also an observability on AI, right? So it's like any other technology which can fail, which can have a malfunction, downtime, etc. So it needs to be observed. So obviously that observation and then this monitoring, that's something that can be also used as a human to be notified about any problem and quickly jump in, right? So, I had this, we have this car sharing company called Bolt, which is similar to what Uber is, right? In EU. And then there was one conference and I was talking to the president of Bolt, and then he was telling the stories of how they were implementing AI agents in the customer support. So basically sometimes people were pushing claims like their food was, let's say, delivered in wrong package or something, and then AI agent wanted to compensate triple the amount of that price, right? And then
This is a very
such
generous
yeah,
agent.
yeah, 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 and such things are getting spotted by kind of observability monitoring, and then it gets remediated. But then the human agent comes into picture, and then if they see something goes into the wrong direction, then this can be quickly remediated. But of course, such an experimentation also gives some experience, and then this can be fine-tuned and fixed in future. But that's like just one example, right? And sometimes it can suggest some refund, or sometimes it can say that, okay, I will escalate to the manager, but there is actually no manager, so it just hallucinated that it will do it for the sake of kind of fulfilling the user kind of need, right?
Wow,
So
that is very interesting. I think like what you said, like AI is great at responding to queries, or requests, right? Which also means that there is a high probability, at least at this point in time, for it to give the user a response they desire, which is not always what the companies want. So maybe like what you said, having that human to observe that process is equally important, and especially at the beginning when you're still trying to implement these new experiments, that's when you really want to have that human in the loop. Do you think that there will be new AI functions or AI roles in organizations moving forward?
yeah, definitely. You know, if you start even from the top, there is a lot of not hype, but there is a lot of discussion whether now all the enterprises and organizations need CAIO, right? Or maybe the director of AI or data, And then obviously AI engineers is one of the up and coming, and I feel like in future, when maybe a couple more years in future, I think all the software development, it will be like merging in this AI engineering. So basically AI engineer will be able to do the same role of software developer plus implementing some of the AI tools and workflows on top. So these will be like new kind of modern developer. And then, yeah, roles like AI strategist and even AI researchers, which is more relevant for maybe big AI labs, but they are also becoming in demand. Maybe not really a new role, but I'm seeing that enterprises also start to look into this and then kind of try to hire and have their own in-house AI excellence. So that would be more data scientists, engineers, AI engineers, researchers, and so on.
I think it will be interesting to see how roles evolve. I also know that some people are talking about the concept of having AI sales engineers. So instead of being like fully engineer or fully a salesperson, they sort of have the ability of both to augment workflows. I think this is something we're going to see not just sales, right, but in like a lot of other functions where you know enough AI to put workflows in place to oversee that process, but you also have enough expertise to then bring it all together. So in this case, tying back to what we said at the start, being that generalist, knowing enough of everything, I think is also extremely important.
Yeah, and I mean, generalist is not like there shouldn't be like an impression that these guys want to know everything and strive and try to do anything, even if they are not proficient in it, and even if you are looking into a couple more areas apart from your current role, that's already a good direction. Because I mean, especially when you feel like and when you see that some of your role tasks are being automated and are quite repetitive and they are good like subject for automation, then you have to think about what are other things you could pivot to. Like if you were a service manager, then maybe there's something from project management that you need to take, or maybe something from delivery management, but there's more like human communication with the customer needed, and which is not for sure not being offloaded to AI anytime soon, because humans love to talk to humans.
Yeah, and I think as we go on in journey along this AI-driven marketing world, especially, I have a feeling it's going to be the humans that stand out a lot more than the content. And I think people are going to go back more to trusting individuals because there will be a lot of hyper-personalized content out there that's really tailored for you, that really speaks to you and sounds human. So it's going to be a lot more noise you have to compete with. And I think the roles that require that human relationship, that human touch, these are things that will never be fully and completely replaced. So it might be good to start considering how you can expand your skill sets to also then prepare for this wave. I'm curious to know, Andres, what got you started on your LinkedIn journey, given that you have a full-time role, you're doing great stuff at the enterprise that you're working with. What got you started into personal branding and also posting content?
Yeah, actually, I I mean, I was planning to do it for some years, and that was always in the backlog, right? And the reason when I wanted to start it is that I felt like I gathered enough experience that I want to start sharing somewhere, right? Because I used to blog before when I was more technical and doing some Oracle related things. So I used to have a blog, and I was also a bit more active on X or Twitter, X Twitter. So, but then that was like a coincidence that when I wanted to get this idea to life finally, and that there was a coincidence that ChatGPT was released, like initial version was released, and then when I kind of tested it, I was like, yeah, I was surprised, to say the least. So I immediately thought about the impact it's going to bring in next years, and then my thinking was like, okay, now I want to share my experience, but augment it with the thoughts about future and AI and how technology and leadership will change due to this. So that's how I started.
Yeah, and I think
So
it's great that you're also bringing your own personal take on top of leveraging the trends, right? Because that's your own experience that you've gathered over years.
yeah, and yeah, I mean, I just just a joke. I felt like I need to share some of my data to train the new models.
Well, you never know. And I'm sure it will be very relevant. And what perhaps was like the one surprising thing or one most interesting thing about your own personal branding journey so far?
Yeah, I was actually surprised. I never, I was never a big user of social media before. So I had Meta and Instagram, but I not never was really active. So I didn't know about the algorithms and how all these things work, and then all these kind of tricks to get more reach and engagement. So I was kind of surprised how quick I was able to score, a so-called viral post, which got me something like 1 million impressions. So I was like, that was interesting. And then, you after this you get an impression that's like, oh, now I can do it and I will repeat it. But then, as hard as you try, the algorithm gods are not with you anymore. So, and then that was interesting just to understand how this thing works and how many people are actually trying to optimize for the algorithm, and like some people are calling them algorithm slaves. So but that was never my aim to do this. So now just being consistent, and whenever you share something really useful, then that would get you enough engagement anyway.
It's true because I think one thing that beats the changes in the algorithm or going viral is consistency. Like, even though it sounds dry, it's the one thing that will work for you in the long term. And especially if, like you, like Andres, you're sharing such valuable content that combines both, new updates on AI with your own expertise and what you think the future could be. That's a great blend of expertise plus experience and also trending topics, which I think is a great mix. So maybe to wrap things up, Andres, what is perhaps one tip you would have for a professional trying to break into the world of AI but don't know where to start?
Oh, my tip would be not to try to follow everything and everyone, not to subscribe to every newsletter out there. Just pick a couple of reputable sources, because right now there are obviously a lot of AI influencers and AI experts, which in reality may not have that much of experience. So make sure you pick, the correct persons, and then really try to experiment with it a lot. So we are in an era where we actually need to experiment. We should not procrastinate any longer with watching endless tutorials, and kind of tricking our brains that we are doing something useful, because that never brings any result. So just take whatever you have read or whatever you had in your mind and test it immediately. And take it from there. Think about possible expansions and follow-ups on this. Think about some interesting use cases, and just do it. Do not watch these endless demos and tutorials, and do not trust all these demo tools until you actually test it yourself, because
Absolutely.
there's so much, sugarcoating right now.
Yes. So I think like what Andre said, don't just watch the YouTube video of someone gymming, go to the gym yourself. It's the same thing with
Mm.
AI.
Yeah,
Put in
exactly.
the work, put in the
Exactly.
reps. That's how you actually build your AI muscle and that's how you get
Yeah.
better. So thank you so much for your time, Andres. Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, just my LinkedIn. I'm not sure if you're sharing any links or something,
We
but
will pop your
yeah.
links in the comments. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. It was
Thank
a
you for having me.
pleasure having you on the show. And thank you, folks, for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the AI Marketers Playbook and hit the bell for more actionable marketing insights. We'll see you next week. Take care.